The person that's had the largest impact on me, my father. I went to him when I was 17 and, Dad, I'm not going to university. To an immigrant, that was very hard for him to hear. And rather than fight me and argue with me and everything else, he got up and walked out the room. And when I finished with school, I was working in call centres and not too sure what to do. That was fine at the time when I was 18, 19, 20 years old and put money in the pocket to give me money to spend on the weekends, really. But then when looking to take my career more seriously, wanted to move into sales and business, investment properties, how to gear yourself for investment properties, how to pay off loans faster, and those sorts of finance deals, which I found quite interesting outside of just let me just get a home loan or a house and land package.
This podcast is your go-to guide for landing your dream job. Think of it as your free masterclass packed with all the tips, advice, and strategies you need to take your career to the next level.
Welcome to Career Reshaped. We're your hosts, Natasha
and Pauline.
And it's our pleasure to introduce to you Zvi Azimov. From humble beginnings answering customer service calls in a call center to building the second largest IT vendor recruitment firm in APAC. Zvi has had a long journey with many twists and turns. He has since started his new recruitment agency, SHIBA Recruitment, and is embarking on a new journey and building his new agency in a remote first world. He's here today to share with us his story, his challenges, and some tips for you how to overcome that. So welcome, Zvi.
Thank you. Zvi. Appreciate the introduction.
Well, thanks for joining us. So if we can start by just going through your journey a little bit, and what we like to focus on is what you thought your career was going to be like, what it ended up being, and the challenges you faced.
Sure. So I've had, as you mentioned, a few twists and turns. So when I finished with school, I was working in call centres and not too sure what to do. So I was working in some customer service call centres for various telcos, insurance companies, and what have you. And, that was fine at the time when I was 18, 19, 20 years old and put money in the pocket to give me money to spend on the weekends, really. But then when looking to take my career more seriously, wanted to move into sales and business and joined a mortgage broking firm and learn about mortgages and started to get a keen interest in investment finance around investment properties, how to gear yourself for investment properties, how to pay off loans faster, and those sorts of finance deals, which I found quite interesting outside of just let me just get a home loan or a house and land package.
So did you go into that out of a passion for yourself, or did you have a friend that was doing that? How did you go down that path?
Both, yeah. So my dad had a friend that had a real estate agency and also a off the plan property real estate arm, which I've always had an interest in property development and property investment. So it made sense for me to go down that pathway. And so it was a bit of both. It was a personal interest, but also an opportunity that was given to me through my dad that introduced me to his friend who was happy to give me a go and teach me the ropes. So did so pretty successfully and realized pretty quickly that the salesmanship was not so much in just getting the deals done. It was in finding opportunities and building networks that would then feed you those opportunities. And then the rest sort of took care of itself. So after a bit of time doing that, I actually introduced one of my best friends and a contact of mine on a deal. One was a property developer, one was a finance broker, and introduced the two of them because there was a deal to be done on one of their projects. And they hit it off really well and ended up starting a business focused just on investment finance and property development and touring around the country with some investment companies that were selling education and selling information to people that were paying money to attend these courses to learn about negative gearing, to learn about off-the-plan property, to learn about all different investment vehicles, because that sounded like a bit of fun. And we toured the country, going Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Perth, sort of away for a couple of weeks at a time and just following these seminars, if you like, and working with their customers. And that was really fun. Obviously, when you're in your early 20s and someone's paying for you to travel around the country and make good money and sell solutions that were aligned with your personal desires and what you were after was really great. But got to a point where I got sick of my weekends being taken up with work. I was more interested in having a bit more balance in life. So I actively set about to get a sales role in a more corporate environment as compared to a business to consumer environment. I wanted to do more business to business sales. So
what was that decision? I understand the more work-life balance, but why specifically sales? And in sales, was there a particular direction you were hoping for?
So sales was always the direction I wanted to take. Sales and business was where I wanted to go from a very young age. My first ever job was during, I was a bit of a cocky kid, let's call it. And so one day, I think I was 17, someone came door knocking at our house from Optus when they just laid out high-speed internet cables around the country. And we were renovating the house at the time, so it was an easy sell for them because we wanted the higher speed internet. And so the sales guy said to me, "Oh, look, this is my first month. How do you think I'm doing?" And me being the cocky 17-year-old I was, I said, "Mate, you're doing all right, but I could do this way better than you." And next thing you know, an hour later, his team leader was at my door trying to get the deal closed with my dad for high speed internet. And he goes, "Oh, I heard you said to my guy that you could do this better than him." I said, "Look, it's not a dig on him. I just reckon I could do it better." And he goes, "All right, well, you start on Monday."
Oh, wow.
Wow. And it was just the start of our school holidays between year 11 and year 12. So he's like, "We'll come in on Monday and meet the owner of the business, and we'll get you set up with an ABN. And if you reckon you can do this better than him, well, why don't you prove it?" So I was like, "Well, I got 6 weeks of nothing coming up, so why not?" So I actually got two of my close friends to come with me as well on the journey, and the three of us went about door knocking, door to door, selling telecommunication services. And as 17-year-olds, we were making a couple of grand a week because it was like shooting fish in a barrel, to be honest, because it was the very beginning of high-speed internet. Everyone was still on dial-up. We were selling cable, Optus TV, which is the equivalent of Foxtel, I suppose. It's no longer around. High-speed internet and pretty much free telephony. So it was a deal too good to refuse at a right place, right time. And but in the middle of summer, walking around and in the heat, trying to sell telco services. But it was so much fun. We had an absolute ball, and I developed an enjoyment for sales, and that was sort of the catalyst, I suppose, for me going, look, this is what I want to do. I want to do sales in various forms. So yeah, sales was always what I wanted to do, and would lead, and I knew it would lead into being in business because without sales there is no business. So I went applying for different business to business sales jobs, and most of the roles that I was applying for were through recruiters, and went into interview with a number of recruiters, and three of them actually offered me jobs as a recruiter.
Wow.
So I thought, well, all right, well, let's see what this is all about. When three different recruiters were all offering me a job in that same week, suddenly I had the option of three different sized agencies. One that was a small boutique with a handful of people. One was a large multinational, and one was sort of 15 odd staff.
Can I ask, was this something you'd ever thought of beforehand?
No, I'd never even considered it, to be honest. Like a lot of people, I thought recruitment was HR, not realizing that recruitment is absolutely a sales job. And ironically enough, at the time, my cousin, who I'm very close with, she was working in a recruitment agency as a major account manager with Adecco, which is one of the world's largest. And so I consulted her and sort of said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And she was pretty forthright with me and said, "Look, I think you'd be really good, and I know you want to go into business for yourself, and it's a really good opportunity to bridge that gap. If you can do this well for others, you'll be able to do it well for yourself." And so
Great advice.
Then it just became a case of which of the three options I wanted to take, whether it was the large multinational, the mid-level guys, or the boutique. And there was a spanner in the works with that one as well, because I chose the boutique because I figured if I'm with only a handful of people and learning directly from the director of the business who had 10 years experience, that I'd get a lot more one-on-one attention and a lot more, and I'd be able to fast track my growth and development by having very experienced people at arm's length to learn from, rather than, just a manager or, being a number, so to speak.
Good thought process.
And that was where I sort of landed in terms of my thought process, and whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. But my first week or two was sat in front of a laptop watching a video training program and taking notes furiously, trying to learn off a guy called Tony Byrne, who was wearing suspenders from the 80s, with all the American rah-rah of new guy, and all this sort of stuff, which, I fondly look back on, and I've actually gone and found those videos and shown them to some of my staff over the journey, just for shits and giggles and for laughs, to be honest. But the irony of that was that after about a year or so, and this was during 2008, during the global financial crisis, and I was recruiting salespeople, having come from a sales background, and it was probably the worst time in history to be recruiting salespeople, as not unlike the last couple of years during COVID. Sales people were a dime a dozen. They were in great supply, so it was a very candidate-rich, job-short market, which is not ideal for the recruitment landscape. So nonetheless, I was able to be successful in that just through sheer perseverance and having a very supportive manager behind me, who was the director of the business, whom I have still a very good relationship with. And the irony of that was that the mid-sized business that I mentioned before that offered me a job actually acquired the company that we were working for. So the director of the business, my boss, sat me down one day and said, "Oh, look, I'm sorry, I've got to make you redundant." And I just called him on his bluff. I said, "Bullshit, I'm making my target. Such and such is making their target. The business is profitable. You're full of it. What's really going on?" Because we had that relationship, and he said, "Look, the honest truth is, I've been acquired by another business." And my first response was, "Please tell me it's not Springboard Consulting." And he goes, "Oh, why?" And ultimately, obviously, it was them. And I actually told him it was a bad idea. I said we're better off building a team to compete with them as compared to joining them. He goes, no, it'll be us. We'll bring our brand of things. I'm going to be managing it. You're going to be my 2IC. We're going to bring our brand of things. Don't worry. It's just going to accelerate our journey and so forth. 8 months later, the company was in voluntary administration.
Oh, wow.
I love it you went from you're redundant to you're going to be my 2IC.
Yeah, because he was just playing with me, and I knew that he was. Yeah. That's why I called him on his bluff. I knew he was just being silly with me. Because technically he had to make me redundant from that agency and employ me with the company that was being acquired by. So technically he was being truthful, but in reality he was just trying to be silly with me. So look, my phone rang by a couple of people who had called me, who'd heard about the financial troubles that Springboard was going through at the time. And one of them was an accounting recruitment agency called Launch Two People. They called me and said, "Look, why don't you come in for a chat? We'll give you this, and this to enable your success and all this support," and so on and so forth, and sold me the dream. And so I decided to take that up.
Yeah.
And then went on to build out a sales arm for that business over the next couple of years, until I'd sort of reached the end of my road with them, where I figured, you know what, it's just not working. I'm not growing. I'm not doing anything here that's revolutionary.
Well, I think we would need to have you on our podcast again in a recruiter hat and ask you these interview questions and resume and chat. But we won't go through that now. But I do have a question going back to what you are shaping SHIBA Recruitment to be with that remote life. that's obviously a transition for you. That's not something you've done before. So how are you going about teaching yourself how to do that? How would people upskill or learn new skills? What's your advice there?
Sure. So there's a bit of a moving goalpost at the moment, as it's in flux a little bit as I bed down the exact strategy that I want to implement. But historically speaking, I've trained people with no recruitment experience whatsoever how to be a 360-degree recruiter, how to be an end-to-end recruiter. And I'm looking to build a business that can do a lot of that without me, in terms of train the people to do the client attraction piece. And that's where the AI and the systems and processes and automation and all of that sort of stuff comes in. And then on the other side, build those systems and people and processes around candidate attraction, around marketing to candidates, around candidate pooling, around all those different aspects that are involved. So training people in a remote first environment means that if they're single task focused, if you like, then that enables me to train them and get them really good at that one thing or two things. And if I can build and the objective is that when I can build a team of say 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 people, 3 or 4 on each side, plus somebody to manage and what have you, and I can just do the client engagement piece, which is what I do, what I enjoy the most and what I do best, then I can have a pretty well-oiled machine.
That's it. I really like the fact that you are leaning into your strengths and your skills and adapting your career around that, and then sourcing others to support in the areas that you maybe don't enjoy as much, or not don't want to focus your energy into, because that's not really your bread and butter in terms of your skills. And that's great. And I think a lot of people they don't try to identify what their skills are, or don't lean into that. They feel that they need to just, no, I got to keep up with the status quo, as opposed to, no, I've got this skill and I'm going to go all the way with it.
Yeah, and look, I've only got so much time in the day as well, right? And part of the problems I faced historically in business is that on a number of occasions, 3 or 4 that I can think off the top of my head, I had staff whom I'd trained with no experience prior leave and start a competitive business. And whilst that sucks at the time, and certainly doesn't feel good from a long-term standpoint,
Yeah.
it's also a credit to the training that we provided, that they felt they were
Absolutely.
able to then go and do it on their own without our support, that they felt that enabled that they could do it on their own. So, having had that before, I'd rather avoid that sort of situation where I'm relying on just, a train and develop type of environment, and rather create a business where it can not run without me entirely, but potentially longer term can.
Yeah. Amazing.
So we mentioned you obviously had some challenges, the big outside of your control challenges, but let's focus on some personal challenges, especially, yes, straight out of high school, you went into call centers because you just wanted to have fun and make some money, as you said, but then you started getting more serious roles. How or what challenges did you face going from working for someone to going out on your own? Because I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that are thinking about that. I'm sick of working for someone, they're getting, most of my profits, and I want to do something for myself. What obstacles did you face, or do you think are more common that need to be overcome?
Yeah, just understanding your limitations are probably the biggest one. Understanding your own strengths and weaknesses and limitations. And, whilst in the end, my relationship with my former business partner was not great. In the beginning, it was fantastic and very, very symbiotic, if you like. We had complementary skills, which was really important. I was able to, despite not having gone to university, and my business partner finishing a Bachelor of Business with accounting, and having gone into accounting roles for a short time before realizing he hated it.
I feel that.
He just couldn't seem to manage the finances of the business where it just made sense to me. So accounting and finance operations became my responsibility. He was very, very good at building relationships. He was very good at getting business in the door, getting meetings, getting to pitches, getting getting to the contest, to use a football analogy, whereas I was really good at the closing piece. So I mentioned that because, having somebody there in my case that was complementary to my skills was important, but also we motivated each other. Little things from, we agreed 7 a.m. is when we had to be in the office. And if you weren't in the office at 7 a.m., then coffees were on you. Now, that may not seem like a very significant thing, but when you're not earning any money, that $4 or $5, that has an impact, right? Especially when you can't afford to buy yourself lunch because you've got no revenue coming in. And having that person there to support you through the highs and the lows to me, was very, very important. But also my own limitations. I'd had limited management skills or experience. So, in order to build a team, you need to learn about management. And so our first hire in the business, we'd gone from a little office with no natural light to a new office that was just with the two of us to, and we were planning to go to the next level to get to, that was from 2 to get to, okay, let's make an office for 11 and then fill it out. But in order to do so, we needed to train the people, we needed to manage the people, you needed to take the steps to actually build that team outside of just, yes, you're hired, I'll pay you. You need to actually be able to support those people while still doing your job. So our first hire was a former manager from the recruitment agency I mentioned before that had gone to another agency since then. And we were like, all right, well, he was a manager and a trainer. We need somebody of that ilk to come in to help us build this business and build this stream. So, hiring when you're out on your own, being able to hire people to fill those gaps, I think to us to me, in my experience, had been vitally important, and also to help alleviate some of the responsibility that you might have to do everything. And that's probably the hardest part that I found, was letting go and just trusting that the people you hire are going to be able to do the right thing. Ironically enough, that person that I mentioned that came on board to train and develop our staff ended up taking our top performer and starting a competing agency. But one of the 4 examples. But nonetheless, the business had outgrown them by that stage. But understanding your limitations and just maintaining your motivation and having a pretty solid why. When we started the business, it was all about, we want to be an employer of choice. We want to be the place that people want to come and work for. We want to have an incredible social presence so that people know who we are, both other recruiters in the market. We want them to know who we are so that, good recruiters want to come and work with us. And also our clients see how active we are in the market and build that credibility and social proof as well. So utilizing the tools at our disposal was very important. We spent a stupid amount of money with LinkedIn. We were my LinkedIn account manager's favorite customer. He took me on wine and dine nights. He took me all over the place because that was good. But it was because we just, anytime he'd call me, we've got this great new product, I just like, all right, just send me the invoice. But at the same time, we utilize all the platforms and the analytics and those sorts of things. So, the biggest thing I would say is that if you're looking to go on your own, be realistic about your expectations, understand your strengths and weaknesses, understand what value you bring to the market and what makes you different, and understand your why, and have very, very clear goals for what you want to do and achieve. We had vision boards. Our staff all had vision boards. We were very, our staff's motivation was very important to us. In fact, I remember my business partner took a number of our staff members to a Gary Vaynerchuk talk that he was doing in Melbourne. And during the talk, he said, "Who here wants to tell their bosses to go and get stuffed?" And then my business partner with 3 of our staff, like, so he said that was a pretty funny experience. But, jokes aside, having making sure that you're putting the right people in the right roles, and having a clear vision are probably the biggest ones. And just believe in yourself, and there'll be hard times and there'll be good times, and you ride them both.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I love the fact that you had a vision board, clear goals. That's I guess that's the most important thing. So if you don't have a clear goal, you don't really know what you're working towards, and you can't really put the right action steps in place to begin with. So, and I do like the whole visual thing, because it's a mindset shift, because when you're visually seeing your goal every day, that helps to rewire your brain and send out that positive energy. And like attracts like, so you are going to start attracting these things that you want. And so I love that. A lot of people don't do that. That I would argue maybe holistic side of things, that that balance. But everyone's about the hustle culture. But there's another side, the internal side of us. That's just
Especially in a hustle culture, like you said, especially in a business that's sales focused, you need to understand what drives your staff, and what drives a salesperson is going to be quite different to what drives an accountant, or what have you. So it's got to obviously be aligned with the people and the type of business that you have. But in my case, the majority of the people that we have are salespeople, and in my opinion, if you're not coin operated and you're not motivated by things and experiences and goals in a sales role, then I've never met a successful salesperson that doesn't have very clear goals, whether they're financial, material, lifestyle, or whatever the case is. That's been my experience.
And this is the thing, like, I hope that our listeners understand that you don't need to be in sales to have clear goals. In life, you need to have clear goals. And you're right, it doesn't have to necessarily be within your career. It's what do you want out of your life? And then how can your career help you achieve it?
Correct.
Yeah.
For example, a media, somebody who's, in marketing might want, to win an award for their marketing efforts. Like, okay, well, what do we have to do to win these awards? How do we reverse engineer that, and so forth? Or somebody might want a bonus to be able to pay for a holiday, because that holiday taking their family away. So it's like, okay, well, you can set an incentive for them to say, well, if you achieve these milestones or KPIs, then I'll give you an extra week of annual leave for your holiday over and above your bonus. And then suddenly a 2-week holiday becomes a 3-week holiday, and they can have the experience they want, or what have you. So, there's always something that will motivate people, or different people in different roles. But in my opinion, having an environment that fosters that is what's important.
Very true. And it's a shame that most companies don't do that. So it's amazing that you did, and you putting people first and creating a culture and a learning and talent growth environment as well. So
yeah, well, I mean, we had pretty big incentive trips as well for people that are overachieving their target. We took people to Hong Kong to watch the rugby sevens. We took our team to Japan to go skiing, to Vegas, and we were on a helicopter past Hoover Dam and had lunch inside the Grand Canyon, amongst other activities.
We've got some high standards to set for ourselves.
So we had some pretty significant, we had some pretty awesome incentives. We had a mid-year incentive and took the team to Bali and got a villa there. We took the team to Cancun in Mexico for an end of year trip, and what have you. So, we rewarded our staff pretty handsomely, in my opinion, for their hard work.
I'd say so. I mean, that's really jet setting around the world. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. Hopefully you can replicate something like that in your new project. So, which I wish you all the luck. It sounds like you've got the skills to do it.
Bring them all together for one of those, and then they all go back to their own houses.
Well, that's right. That's the intent there, Natasha. It's that if you're going to have a geographically dispersed team, you also need to ensure that there's an ability to have them all come together and actually build relationships internally as well, because that then serves them and serves the business longer term when they know each other.
That's it.
So on a final point, I wanted to bring up also that you actually never went to uni. So you,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, straight from high school, you went to work. And I really love that. I mean, I know there are some professions where you've got to study if you want to be a doctor or a surgeon, stuff like that.
Sure.
But it really goes to show that there are some people that don't go to uni, one, because they don't know what they want to do. And then they get stuck and they think, well, I guess I need to do labor or work, in the supermarket or whatever it is, and they get stuck. And with your story, it's no, you didn't know what you wanted. So you started in call centers and you got that love for sales from that. So it's just about getting out and doing something. And with you as well, you used your networks. You kept talking to people. What are you doing? What are you up to? And finding new things like the finance and the property and all of that. And it hopefully will be inspirational to some of our listeners that
Yeah, and
forward.
And good
yeah,
mentor.
so the mentorship part of things is probably where I've got the most luck, to be honest, through my life. But probably the person that's had the largest impact on me, and I know you haven't asked the question there, but I'll probably answer the question you haven't asked. But the person that had the most significant impact on me, thankfully, was my father. I went to him when I was 17 or 16 and said, Dad, I'm not going to university. And to an immigrant who had made a lot of sacrifices for their kid, that was very hard for him to hear. And rather than fight me and argue with me and everything else, he got up and he walked out the room. And I thought, geez, I've killed him. What have I done? But then moments later, he came into the room and said, well, because he first asked me before he left the room, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I've just had all this success over here doing door-to-door sales. I've really enjoyed sales. I think I'm going to have a career in sales. He said, okay. And he got up and he walked out the door. And I thought, oh, geez, I've blown it here. What have I done? And he came back in a few minutes later and handed me 2 books. One of them was How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the other one was Think and Grow Rich.
Wow.
And he said, just because you're not going to go to university doesn't mean your education stops. Your education in the sales world starts now. And, I grew up with him listening to audios and audiobooks in the car every time. I never listened to music. I always had to listen to the tapes he was playing. He had a library of these sorts of books, and he just kept feeding me these sort of books and having me upskill and grow myself using mindset-based books. And so, that saw me in good stead in regards to visualization, goals, human interaction, relationships, understanding money and how that works, and good debt, bad debt, passive income, and those sorts of things. And so, to your point, Natasha, it's just because I didn't study doesn't mean I stopped learning. And the importance of learning has always followed me around. So, to anybody that any of your listeners that are stuck and not sure what to do, pick up one of these books. There's a lot of people out there that have a list of top books for your next move, and I'm sure that My Career Angels can put out a post about here's the top 10 books if you're stuck in your career to help you move along and those sorts of things. And so
we actually do that in our newsletters.
Yes.
there you go. Right.
Yes.
So, to those that listen, and a Spotify, an Audible subscription these days costs you less than $10 a month, or thereabouts, I believe. You just keep learning. And learning doesn't have to just be about a skill. It can be your mindset. And
great advice.
That's probably what the answering the question that you didn't ask is what did I do to, given I didn't have the university degree that enabled me to be successful, and that's what it was. It was.
Well, that's the answer I was hoping for.
Yeah, it's reading those books and growing your mindset. That's probably had the biggest impact on me.
Amazing. Well, that's fantastic, and hopefully that our listeners get a lot from what you've said today. We appreciate you so much for your time. It's been a great story, all your career changes or career reshaping that you have gone through, and the challenges and how you've overcome them, and the advice, especially just then about even if you don't go to uni, doesn't mean you stop learning. Upskill yourself, read those books, have a look at our newsletters. We we do post the books that we believe would be really good
Mhm.
for your careers as well. And I am going to hold you to you coming on again, talking about recruitment side of things and resumes and interview skills.
Yeah, and on a personal level, of course, I'm also very, very lucky to have a very supportive family and supportive partner who is always there, right? So, having a really good support network that encourages you to go and achieve more is extremely important in my experience.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
No worries, my pleasure.